Now listen. I read a book once. Old book. Been around almost 100 years, which, depending on who you ask, makes it either outdated or bulletproof. The book is called Think and Grow Rich by a man named Napoleon Hill. And there's a story in there I never forgot. Hill writes about a warrior who sailed his army across the sea to fight a battle they had no business winning. When his men hit the shore, he gave one order: burn the boats. Every last one. Because when there's no way home, the only direction left is forward. Now that story stuck with me, because it reminds me of a woman I once knew. Her name was Diane. Diane Reeves was 29 years old. She lived in second-floor apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina. She works as an office administrator at a real estate firm called Leland and Associates. She answered phones, filed paperwork, and made sure the coffee pot was full by 8 a.m. and empty by 8:07. She makes $36,000 a year, just enough to pay your bills and have absolutely nothing left over to show for it. But Diane wasn't dumb. Not even close. She had a sharp mind, the kind that could look at a spreadsheet and see what most people missed. She just happened to be sitting in a chair that didn't require any of it. She had a boy, Elijah, 4 years old, big brown eyes. The kind of kid who asks why the sky is blue, and when you tell him, he asks why blue is blue. Diane loved that boy like breathing. And the thing that kept her up at night? Elijah was about to start kindergarten, and the schools in their zip code made the news for all the wrong reasons. So every night, after Elijah fell asleep, she'd sit at the kitchen table with cold coffee and a laptop and study real estate investing. Not the flashy kind, the real kind. Rental yields, seller financing, cap rates. She understood the math better than half the licensed agents at her firm. But the thing with her is, she always had a plan B and a plan C. Never went all in on anything. Because if she didn't fully commit, she couldn't fully fail. Then one Tuesday, one ordinary, unremarkable Tuesday, her boss dropped closing documents on her desk. 3 investment properties, 1 buyer, a woman about her age, no fancy credentials, just someone who had done what Diane had only dreamed about. And a thought crept in, quiet but sharp. I could have structured this deal. But right behind it came the other voice, the one that had been whispering since she was a teenager. People like you don't do that, Diane. You type the paperwork, you don't sign it. She went home that night, tore a blank page out of Elijah's coloring book, and she wrote a number. Not a dream, the exact dollar amount she needed for a down payment on her first investment property. Underneath it, a date, 9 months out. And underneath that, what she would give in return. Every evening, every weekend, every spare hour she had. She didn't know it then, but she just followed the very first step of a framework Napoleon Hill lays out in Think and Grow Rich. 6 steps for turning a desire into something real. And the first one is this: get specific. How much? By when? What will you give for it? Because you cannot hit a target you haven't drawn. Oh, now here is where the story gets good. You all with me? Good. Because this right here, is the part most people never figure out. See, Diane had desire. Blazing, burning desire. But desire alone? Desire alone is just a wish on a birthday candle. Hill knew that. He wrote about something called specialized knowledge. And he said something that stopped me cold the first time I read it. Knowledge is not power. I know. Every teacher you ever had told you different. But old Napoleon Hill, he looked at the wealthiest people in America and said, knowledge is only potential power. It becomes real power when it's organized, when it's got a plan behind it, when it's aimed at something specific. You understand what I'm saying? And Diane, Diane understood. She stopped dabbling. She stopped reading a little of this and a little of that. She found the exact course she needed. Creative real estate financing. The specific kind that matched that specific number on that coloring book page. How to find deals nobody else was looking at. How to get sellers to finance her. How to build something extraordinary out of almost nothing. She got focused. And wouldn't you know it, 2 months later, she found her first deal. A duplex, east side of Charlotte. Beautiful bones on that building. She put together the cleanest offer she could. Walked in, proud as you please. And the seller looked her dead in the eye and said, no. Not maybe, not let me think about it, just no. She found a second property. Got all the way to inspections, appraisals, the whole beautiful dance. 2 weeks from closing. And the financing fell through. The lender changed terms at the last minute. 2 months of work. Gone. Just gone. Now here, right here, is where most people's story ends. And Hill knew it. He said persistence is to character what carbon is to steel. Without it, you are soft. With it, you are unbreakable. But when you're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel like steel. It feels like stupidity. But not Diane. Oh no. She found a third property, quit her job, burned every boat behind her. Her mama called her reckless. Her best friend looked at her like she'd lost her mind. And then the title search came back with a lien that couldn't be cleared. Deal was dead. 3 swings, 3 misses. Now let me tell you a story within the story. Hill writes about a man, R.U. Darby, who went out west chasing gold. And he found it, struck a beautiful vein. Then the vein disappeared. He drilled and found nothing. Finally sold his equipment to a junk man for pennies on the dollar and went home broken. That junk man hired an engineer. And that engineer took one look and said, the vein is right there. 3 feet from where Darby stopped digging. 3 feet! And that junk man pulled millions out of that mine. Millions! Because he asked one more question, took one more step. Most people quit 3 feet from gold. Not because they're weak, because they cannot see through the rock.
Diane sat in her car in a grocery store parking lot. Engine off, phone in her hand. Her old boss's number was pulled up. One tap, and she could have her safe, beige, soul-crushing desk back. Then she looked at the passenger seat. Elijah had left a crayon drawing there that morning. A yellow house with a big yard. 2 stick figures holding hands out front. Underneath, in wobbly 4-year-old letters, Mom's new house. She put the phone down. And she sat in that car and said out loud to no one, I am a real estate investor. I close deals. I provide for my son. This is who I am. She said it like she meant it. Then she said it again. Hill calls that autosuggestion. He says plain, unemotional words do not reach the subconscious mind. You have to mix feeling with your words. And sitting in that parking lot, with tears running down her face and a crayon drawing on the seat beside her, Diane felt every syllable. Now here's where the story turns. Diane didn't have money, didn't have a job, but she had something Hill calls the mastermind. Fancy words for a simple idea. You cannot do big things alone. During her months of studying, she'd built relationships. A mortgage broker named Sandra, a contractor named Ray who owed her a favor, a retired investor named Mr. Jeffries who'd been quietly watching her from the sidelines at a local meetup. She called all three, not for charity, for partnership. Sandra found creative financing. Ray agreed to do renovations at cost for a share of the profit. Mr. Jeffries put up capital for a percentage of the returns. It was a real plan, a workable plan, and it was hers. Because of that, she found a fourth property, a foreclosure. Ugly on the outside, solid on the bones. The numbers sang, and this time, she didn't hesitate. The deal wasn't smooth. Plumbing issues nobody expected. The closing got pushed back twice. 3 days before signing, the bank called with a problem that felt like the whole thing was going to fall apart again. And Diane, the same woman who used to keep a plan B for her plan B, looked at the coloring book page still taped to her refrigerator and said, "We are closing this deal." She called her three partners, and they solved the problem together. They closed on a Thursday. Diane signed the papers, not typed them, signed them. Her hand shook. Her voice was steady.
6 months later, the duplex was renovated, rented, both units, positive cash flow from month 1. It wasn't a fortune, not yet, but it was proof. Proof that the number on the coloring book page wasn't a fantasy. Within 2 years, Diane owned 3 properties. She moved Elijah to the school district she dreamed about. The apartment was gone. The cold coffee was gone. The voice that said, "People like you don't do that." It was still there sometimes, late at night, but it was quieter now. And Diane had learned something it never wanted her to know. That voice was never trying to protect her. It was trying to keep her still. The transformation didn't happen in one moment. It happened in 100 small ones. The night she wrote the number down. The day she quit her job. The parking lot where she talked to herself through tears. The Thursday she signed her name instead of typing someone else's. Now let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this one. What's the boat you have been afraid to burn? What's the thing you keep a backup plan for? Not because the backup is smarter, but because going all in means you might have to face what happens if it doesn't work. Drop your answer in the comments. Not for me, for you. Because sometimes writing it down is the first step. Same as Diane with that coloring book page. You know, I've lived a long time. And the people who make it, they aren't the smartest or the luckiest. They're the ones who decided, really decided, and then refused to undecide. Napoleon Hill studied the wealthiest people in America for 20 years and boiled it all down to 13 principles. But the one that holds the rest together? You have to want it so bad that quitting becomes more painful than failing. That's the burning desire. That's the burned boats. If any of this spoke to you, pick up Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and read it for yourself. Some books don't just teach you things, they change the way you see yourself. This is one of those books. Diane's still out there, by the way, still building. And every now and then, when a deal gets hard and that old voice tries to creep back in, she pulls a folded piece of coloring book paper from her wallet, worn at the creases, faded at the edges, and reads that number one more time. The boats are ashes now, and she's never looked back. If this story spoke to you, hit that like button and come on back. I've got more stories just like this one. Ordinary folks who figured out something extraordinary. And I'll be right here waiting for you. Until next time.